What's up, y'all? Welcome back to The Pit. I'm your host, the guy who invented milk. I don't think it's that far of a reach to say that the Caretaker has changed my life. But I know for many people, when they hear someone say that unironically, that's going to elicit an immediate eye roll, but I think it's 100% true. Other people say Everywhere at the End of Time changed their life and how they see it. And I experienced that shift as well, too, don't get me wrong. But, let's get real for a second. You probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that record. And I'm eternally grateful for my audience, but I don't want to make this a gushy, sob-fest, retrospective thank you thing. More of an appropriate introduction to demonstrate my relationship with the Caretaker. And after many, many moons of people recommending me to listen to the subject of this video. So I thought, what an appropriate time to revisit his work on the 1-year anniversary of that Caretaker video dropping. Hopefully 1-year anniversary. Editing Jake, is this the 1-year anniversary?
I think so.
Okay, cool. No one cares. Now get back to work, Dick. Now everyone knows James Leyland Kirby's 6-hour epic Everywhere at the End of Time he made under the Caretaker name. But I would be genuinely shocked if you didn't. Like, it has a know your meme page, for fuck's sake. Like, every once in a while I'll be scrolling through Instagram memes and just get Vietnam flashbacks. But not many people know what came before Everywhere at the End of Time. A prequel, if you will. An empty bliss beyond this world. This was released before Everywhere at the End of Time would be released to the public, before any of the 6 stages would be released, and it holds the same themes and messages as Everywhere at the End of Time. The big difference between the two records is mainly length. The big funny of Everywhere at the End of Time is it's 6 hours, and girls on TikTok make challenges out of it. However, we checked the flip side of this coin, whereas An Empty Bliss Beyond This World comes in at a crisp 45 minutes. Drake's Scorpion is longer than that. Double that, actually. But for some reason, this flies under people's radars for the most part. And when I say this, I'm not talking about the clever boys and girls who deep dive this shit. I mean the average TikTok scroller who hears the first 5 seconds every once in a while and maybe saw the album cover once. I feel like this album is an excellent comparison piece to Everywhere at the End of Time. And considering An Empty Bliss Beyond This World was released in 2011, 5 years after the first stage would ever be released to the public. It's like a movie sequel where you could see the ideas, the blueprints, if you will, that James Kirby would build upon in his later releases. We'd see the record blossom and flesh out into a record 9 times the original's length. So let's dive into An Empty Bliss Beyond This World and get to the nitty-gritty of the Alzheimer's music that's taken the world by storm. Now, something I'd like to recycle from my previous Caretaker outing, that from feedback that was, much appreciated, I recommend proceeding with caution. This type of music and this message affects people in very different ways, so if this seems a bit too much, hey man, I won't judge, we all have our crosses to bear. An Empty Bliss Beyond This World was the 7th album released by the Caretaker on June 1st, 2011. Whoa. 10 years as of me recording this. Shit. It came after Caretaker releases like Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom, A Stairway to the Stars, We'll All Go Riding on a Rainbow, Theoretically Pure Anterograde Amnesia, Deleted Scenes, Forgotten Dreams, and Persistent Repetition of Phrases. Keep in mind I'm just scratching the surface of the music Kirby has released, not even counting releases under his other names, but that's possibly for another video for possibly another time. Now the reason I've been leaning so heavily on the prequel mentality for this video, because reading various descriptions and reviews of this, it follows much of the parallels presented by Everywhere at the End of Time. Allow me to direct you to the official Caretaker Bandcamp page. The Caretaker conjures a quieter, more introspective spirit, lost in his own mind amidst a low-lit labyrinth of ever-decaying and antediluvian shellac phrases, sourced from a mysterious collection of 78s, the vague snippets of archaic sonics to reflect the ability of Alzheimer's patients to recall the songs of their past, and with them, recollections of places, people, moods, and sensations. Now what I'm gathering, whereas Everywhere at the Time was a physical representation of the experience someone has when going through the entire cycle of Alzheimer's disease, An Empty Bliss is specifically towards the second, third portion of the record, where a patient has trouble remembering most things, but their favorite songs are still holding on, even if barely. The production side of the music is something I want to talk about, with how it's almost too simple of how this record came about. From my research, to make the record, Kirby would visit a local record store in Brooklyn, New York, and find extremely cheap, extremely old, and extremely dilapidated oldies vinyl records, purchase them, and manipulate them to create his most famous works. It's almost extremely smart with him going about finding samples this way, because it makes the hunt for these samples very difficult. Allow me to paint a picture for you. Let's say you are a musician in the 20s or 30s, you make your music and find someone to press it on vinyl. Now, music culture back then and music culture now are practically alien from each other, so it was not uncommon for a musical project to be completely lost to time, except for a handful of physical records. So if Kirby purchased one of the only ever known records of a piece of music, that original sample may never be found. And this is a very small piece of the puzzle of the lore that is his music. Like, there's a group of people determined to find all the samples in his work, and I don't want to get too into the sample hunting culture, because Pat Chennington is making what seems to be becoming an over 4-hour video on everything Caretaker, and the sample hunt is a big section, so he can probably explain that much better and more in-depth, so check that out when it drops. But enough Pat, this is my video. Also, something that seems to have become entwined with the actual listening experience of the record is the visual aspect of it. Now, compressed version of the backstory, James Leyland and Kirby was and is very close friends with Ivan Seal, who seems to be the art director for almost all of Kirby's releases, probably since Persistent Repetition of Phrases. But much how artwork is a point in the 6 stages to come after, I almost think this album cover is Kirby's best ever. It's simple, huge, tiny, loud, quiet, scary, and calming, all wrapped up into a taut little bow on the dementia present. Unlike End of Time, where the covers are meant to induce this phenomenon of not knowing what you're looking at, you know what this is. It's a boulder looking thing with a single match sticking out of it, but something about it just attracts me and hypnotizes me. Ivan Seal really knocked it out of the park with this one. Like, it just encapsulates the mystique of this record just perfectly. Now, I bet your burning question is, what does this sound like? Well, it sounds a lot like Everywhere at the End of Time. Crazy, right? I thought it was going to be something of a compressed version of that series, the effects of the 6.5 hours chopped down into a cool 45. That's not really the case. If I had to give my 2 cents, this seems to be floating around the 2, 3, and 4 stages, where it's not clear, but it's not a distorted white noise mess. I can understand the songs, and I can identify the instruments for the most part, but sometimes the noise is just too much, and sometimes the distortion gets the better of the music. Tracks like The Great Hidden Sea of the Unconscious is a good example, where it seems more altered than the usual suspects on this album, with a seemingly heavier layer of static than the previous 2 tracks, and a sense of distance in the song, like the metaphorical memory is just playing outside your reach, while you can hear it but you can't interact with it. Like a much deeper and poetic variant of the insert song here playing while you cry in the bathroom of a party meme. A few songs give off the vibe of terror instead of hopelessness. Tracks like Libette's Delay, A Relationship with the Sublime, and the title track ignite feelings of terror, like a scene from a horror movie is playing out. The pre-climax scene where the protagonist has awoken in or found themselves in the monster's lair, and they're about to fight for their survival. This could be a whole separate topic, dissecting works of art conceived from the Caretaker's music, but I'll shout one person out who perfectly captures what this music feels like. Like, come on, fuck that noise. This is so perfect and awesome, but God, I hate it. The title track appears on here twice. The first time 6 tracks in, and the second 12 tracks in. And this is why I think he devised the idea of presenting a gradual incineration of comprehension, because the second appearance on the record is more distorted and a more far away sounding version, like he's toying with the idea of degradation, something similar to what William Basinski was doing almost 10 years prior with the Disintegration loops. While almost every mood of music exists in this record, hopelessness like bedded deep in the long-term memory, terrifying like pared back to the minimal, atmospheric like mental caverns without sunshine, and borderline silly like camaraderie at arm's length. A descriptive word you probably won't hear me use a lot with the Caretaker's music is beautiful. It almost feels weird to have a favorite song in this context, but the song I Feel As If I Might Be Vanishing is a genuinely beautiful piece. One I wouldn't be surprised if you told me Kirby ditched the samples and created this all by himself. This seems to be a synth or string piece decorated with squeaky horns we've come to know from the Caretaker. Words can only convey the message so far. It's nothing like actually listening. See for yourself the little nooks and crannies on this record and which songs seem intelligible and others quickly plummet you down into a deep, dark abyss you don't know if you'll crawl back out of when the next track comes on. I think Kirby found a story he wanted to tell in an Empty Bliss Beyond This World. He made a 45-minute album that does a great job of capturing what an Alzheimer's patient is experiencing right before it takes a turn for the worse. But he wasn't satisfied with that, so after a few other musical outings, he returned to the subject matter and discovered how deep and demented this labyrinth goes, and found a way to allow the listener to emulate from start to finish the process of someone spiraling down. A question people ask me a lot is, what do I do if I want to listen to Everywhere at the End of Time, but I don't know if I can commit to a 6-hour listening experience? Now, something I would have requested, jokingly over a year ago is listen to Everywhere at the End of Time in 7 minutes, or Everywhere at the End of Time stages 1 through 6 be like. But now people have stripped back the meme identity that this album created, but people have created really good companion pieces with this music, like genuinely well done compressed versions, ones that add or subtract stages to create a whole different experience, and some who just change the music altogether. Like, it's gonna sound like I'm taking the piss, but the video Minecraft, but it's Everywhere at the End of Time, is a really competent piece of music. It's for those who can't really relate to such old music and want something a bit more modern for a better idea of someone in our generation experiencing this. But all those are unofficial. Very good and competent, but unofficial. And if you want ideas and mentalities from the source, check out an album released only 10 years ago. I think we found the perfect medium for someone who seems a bit intimidated by this 6-hour time code and the life-ending ramifications. If you want a place to start with experiencing music like this is a great first stop in your journey. However, there really isn't a substitute for such a long and gradual degradation of someone's mind experiencing those 6 hours, but I feel an Empty Bliss Beyond This World is a very good litmus test to inspect the waters to see if this seems like a journey you can commit to. An Empty Bliss Beyond This World definitely deserves a brighter spotlight grazed upon it, since the shadow cast by Everywhere at the End of Time is so large. This was James Lynn and Kirby testing the waters in a topic not many musicians would talk about before him, let alone people who are afraid that this mental illness could affect them and drastically change they and their families' lives. Because of that, this piece should be nothing short of commended. But no matter how you choose to experience this emotional journey, I'm just glad people felt compelled to actually take the journey in the first place. I finally did it, guys. 1 full year later. Yeehaw. I know this was probably longer than what you would have probably wanted for a look at this piece, but I thought the 1 year mark was fitting. I hope you enjoyed it though, because this was such a daunting task to try and revisit such a polarizing topic, but I think it came together pretty nicely. I mean, hell, I had 1 full year of experience under my belt, so it better have been worth it. Now, much like my other videos, I'd like to take this time to shout out the sources of my research. Shout out to all the comparison pieces I mentioned, like Minecraft equivalent and other videos in that vein. I encourage you to explore versions like this if Everywhere at the End of Time and Empty Bliss tickled your fancy. Shout out Wikipedia, the homie. Shout out to Andyland for the animation where the Empty Bliss music is behind it, because that shit rocked, and it was released early 2020, before any of this really took off to the mainstream, so I guess he's the new Caretaker guy. And of course, shout out to James Lynn and Kirby, a sweet man who after my video dropped, I managed to get in contact with him, and I was just kind of thanking him for what he did and tell him how much his music means to me. Yeah. And he was just such a nice guy, and I got the sense he genuinely just wants to make the world a better place with his music, and you can't help but smile when you realize all this existential dread and terror was created by such a solid dude. Oh, also, quick shout out to Pad and his upcoming video on everything Caretaker related. Like I said, he's hyping this up to be over 4 hours. I made a quick cameo in it, so if it's out, go watch it, and if it's not, I don't know, go read a book. I don't give a shit. But yeah, I appreciate you watching. How epic of you. I like to take this time to plug some of my extracurriculars. I'm pleased to announce the deluxe version of my album Super Jail was just released about a week or two ago, and I received such support from the original album, and I had the idea of making a deluxe version the entire time I was making the album, and I thought, why not release some songs from the sessions? I thought they were just too good to leave on my now bricked hard drive. To listen, Spotify, Apple Music, and Bandcamp links will all be below, as well as my Big Fish podcast I run, and the Good Enough podcast I'm a part of with the boys Luke on Demand and Jackson Burns, so check those out if you will, if you want to hear my goofy little voice on, more chill subjects. I don't know. It's really crazy how much happens in a year. It really is. Literally none of this existed a year ago. That's just so cool. I'm so thankful for everything I've created since. All the awesome projects I've done, all the awesome people I've met, whether that be just a fan shooting me a quick DM saying, what's up and I'm like, yo, what up? Or just some real solid people that I'm proud to call my friends now. But enough of that lame shit. Thank you for watching. And as long as you remember to send Jake your extra copy of An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, then you're good to go. So thank you for watching. I do always appreciate it. And always remember to have a pleasant day.